Before we go on, I want to sincerely thank those who have been following and watching my videos. It really means a lot to me and my team. And if today is your first time following us, please subscribe and leave a comment. Thank you once again. Now let's get on with our story today. I never expected to hear from her again. Not after what happened. Not after she was gone. The night it all started, I was sitting on my couch, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. It had been a long day at work, and all I wanted was to sink into the cushions, let the hum of the TV fill the silence, and let my thoughts fade into something less heavy. It had been 3 years since I last spoke to Mia. 3 years since I'd seen her face. 3 years since I'd walked away from the most toxic, suffocating relationship of my life. And 3 years since she died. I was the one who left. I was the one who got away. She never forgave me for it. I remember the last time I saw her. We had been standing in the kitchen of her apartment, the air thick with resentment and something worse. She was screaming, her voice raw with a kind of desperation that didn't make sense. "You don't get to leave," she had said, her hands shaking. "You don't get to just forget about me." I had left anyway, and a week later I got the call. She was dead. A car accident, they said. Late at night, out on an empty Texas road. Her car had flipped off the highway and landed upside down in a ditch. No survivors. At least that's what I was told. But on that quiet night, 3 years later, as I sat there in my dimly lit living room, my phone buzzed. I glanced down. Unknown number. I wouldn't have thought twice about it, except for the message. "I've missed you." The world around me stilled. I stared at the screen, my breath caught in my throat. A feeling I hadn't felt in years curled in my stomach, slow and suffocating. It wasn't possible. I clicked the message, my fingers hesitant. My first thought was that it was a prank. Someone had to be messing with me. I typed back, my hands unsteady. "Who is this?" Seconds later, the dots appeared. Someone was typing. "Don't act like you don't know me." I sat up, my body rigid. A cold sensation crawled down my spine. I clicked on the number, hoping for some kind of clue, a name, a hint. Nothing. No contact photo, no saved name, just a blank space where an identity should have been. But then something changed. The number itself. I watched in real time as the digits on my screen rearranged themselves. And suddenly, instead of a string of unknown numbers, a name appeared. Mia. I dropped the phone. It landed face up on the couch, the screen still glowing in the dim light. My pulse pounded in my ears. Mia was dead. Wasn't she? The phone sat on the couch, its glow fading, the screen darkening into an empty void. I didn't move. Couldn't. My body felt frozen in place, my heartbeat too loud in the silence. The weight of the message pressed down on me like something heavy, something real. I swallowed, forcing myself to breathe. This was impossible. Mia was dead. I had been to her funeral. I had stood in the cemetery and watched as they lowered her casket into the ground. I had listened as her mother sobbed, as the preacher said words about rest and peace, words that felt meaningless now. This had to be a sick joke. Maybe someone hacked her number. Maybe it was some twisted scam. I picked up the phone again, my fingers unsteady, and typed as quickly as I could. "Whoever this isn't funny. Mia is dead." I hit send. Seconds passed. Then the dots appeared. She was typing. "You always say things like that. You never believed me." My breath hitched. I clenched the phone tighter, my knuckles white. Never believed her? What did that even mean? I tried to type something else, but before I could, Another message came through. This one wasn't text. It was a photo. I stared at the attachment for a long moment, dread curling in my stomach. I didn't want to open it, but I had to. I tapped it. The image loaded. It was a picture of me, not from years ago, not from our relationship. It was a picture of me sitting on the couch right now. The angle was wrong, slightly tilted, as if someone had taken it from outside my window. I turned my head slowly, my eyes darting to the curtains covering the glass. My breath came faster now, shallow, uneven. Was someone out there? I stood up on shaky legs and stepped toward the window, my pulse hammering in my throat. Carefully, I pulled the curtain back. Nothing. The street outside was still, bathed in dim orange light from the flickering street lamp. My yard was empty, my driveway too, but my skin crawled with the distinct, undeniable feeling of being watched. Another buzz, another message. You shouldn't have looked. I stumbled back, my grip on the phone tightening. I forced myself to breathe, to think logically. Someone had to be messing with me. There had to be an explanation. I scrolled through my contacts, looking for someone, anyone, who might have an idea of what was happening. My fingers hovered over the name Ben, my best friend. He was the only one who had been there when I broke up with Mia. The only one who saw how bad things had gotten. I called. The phone rang once, twice. Then, Ben's voice came through, groggy and irritated. Dude, do you know what time it is? I exhaled sharply. I hadn't even checked the time. Ben, listen. Someone is texting me from Mia's number. There was silence. Then what? I don't know who it is, but they know things. They just sent me a picture of myself. From outside my window, more silence. Then a heavy exhale. Man, Ben sounded uneasy. Are you messing with me? Why the hell would I mess with you? Because I got a text, too. My blood ran cold. What? A message. About 10 minutes ago. From Mia's number. I swallowed. What did it say? There was a long pause before he spoke. She said, "Don't let him forget me." I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I spent hours scrolling through my phone, trying to find some kind of rational explanation. I searched Mia's old accounts, looking for anything unusual, but her social media had been inactive for years. No posts, no updates, like she had been erased. But something else was bothering me. I had never actually looked into the details of her death. I had taken the police report at face value, assumed that the crash had been an accident, that she had died alone instantly. But what if that wasn't the whole truth? What if something else happened that night? I pulled up old news articles, scanning headlines. Local woman killed in car crash, no survivors. Mia Fletcher, 24, loses control of vehicle on FM Road 197. Strange details surface about deadly wreck. Witnesses report seeing someone else at the scene. That last headline made my heart stop. Someone else at the scene? I clicked the article. The details were vague. An unnamed witness claimed they had seen a second figure standing near Mia's wrecked car in the moments after the crash. But no one had ever been found. No one had ever come forward. The police had dismissed it as a mistake, the ramblings of a passing driver who had been too shaken to trust their own memory. But now I wasn't so sure. Something wasn't right. I shut my laptop, rubbing a hand over my face. I felt raw, drained. Then my phone vibrated again. Another message. But this time it wasn't from Mia's number. It was a voicemail. I hesitated before playing it. At first, there was only static. then the faintest sound of breathing, and finally a whisper. "Come find me." The line went dead. The address sat on my phone screen, burning into my mind like a warning. Mia's old house. She hadn't lived there for years. After we broke up, she had moved into an apartment across town, trying to start over, trying to move on. That was where she had lived when she died. So why the hell was she leading me back here? I sat frozen in my chair, the dim glow of the screen illuminating my hands. My fingers were cold. My chest was tight. My brain was screaming at me to ignore it, to shut my phone off and pretend none of this was happening. But my gut knew better. This wasn't over. And deep down, I knew it wouldn't stop until I went to that house. I left just after midnight. The roads were empty, the air thick with humidity, the way Texas nights always felt. Heavy, like the sky was pressing down on me. The old house wasn't far. It sat on the outskirts of town, past the newer developments, past the streetlights, past the places that felt safe. By the time I reached the road leading to it, I had turned off my music, letting the silence stretch between me and whatever was waiting there. I pulled up in front of the house. It looked exactly the same. A small, one-story home, the kind you'd drive past without noticing. The paint was chipped and faded, the wooden fence out front warped with time. The porch light was dead, leaving the entrance shrouded in darkness. A memory surfaced. Mia standing in the doorway, smiling, calling me inside. For a second, I could almost hear her voice again. But this house wasn't hers anymore, and whatever was inside now wasn't her. The front door wasn't locked. That should have been my first warning. It opened with a slow creak, revealing the dark, empty interior beyond. I hesitated on the threshold, the stale air wrapping around me like something alive. I stepped inside. The air felt wrong, too still, like the house had been waiting for me. The living room was exactly as I remembered. The old couch, the coffee table, the faded rug, everything untouched, like time had stopped the moment Mia left. I moved forward carefully, my heartbeat loud in my ears. A sound creaked from the hallway. I stopped, my breath hitched. Someone or something was back there. I forced myself toward the hallway, each step slow, measured. The air grew colder the further I walked. At the end of the hall was Mia's old bedroom. The door was slightly open, a thin sliver of darkness stretching beyond it. Something moved inside. I froze. It wasn't a shadow. It wasn't a trick of the light. Something shifted just barely. A shape, a figure. I reached for my phone, my hands shaking as I lifted it. I turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, spilling into the bedroom. And I saw it. The mirror. It was the only thing inside the room. The furniture was gone. The bed, the dresser, the posters Mia used to tape to the walls. All of it gone, except for the mirror. A tall, full-length mirror, standing against the back wall, its glass covered in dust. And in the center of it, a handprint, small, feminine, pressed against the glass, like someone had tried to get out. I swallowed hard, stepping closer. My reflection moved with me, but something about it felt off. The room was silent, but the air carried an expectation, like it was waiting for me to do something. I reached out, my fingertips brushing the glass. A chill shot through my arm. Cold, unnatural. Then, the mirror flickered, like a glitch, like static on an old television screen. And suddenly, my reflection wasn't alone. She was standing behind me. Mia. Her face was pale, her eyes dark and hollow. Her hair was wet, strands clinging to her skin like she had just crawled out of something deep and suffocating. Her lips moved. I couldn't hear the words. I could only see them. "Help me!" I couldn't move. My body felt disconnected, like I was standing in a place that no longer obeyed the rules I had known my whole life. My reflection was still there, frozen in the mirror, but I wasn't alone in it. Mia's pale figure loomed just behind me. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't angry. She wasn't anything. Just there, her presence pressing against the air like a weighted fog. Her lips had moved. "Help me." The words were burned into my mind. Slowly, I turned my head to look behind me to see if, by some impossible chance, she was really there, standing inches from my back. But the room behind me was empty. The mirror, however, told a different story. When I looked back, she was closer. My pulse hammered against my ribs. My breathing turned shallow. My instincts screamed at me to run, to get out of this house before whatever was staring at me through the mirror got closer. I stumbled backward, my heel catching on the warped wooden floor. The mirror flickered again like static disrupting an old television screen, and for a fraction of a second, I saw something worse. Her mouth. It was open now, stretched wider than it should have been, as if she was screaming, though no sound came through. Then, the light behind me went out. I spun around, my heart racing. The hallway was gone, swallowed in darkness. A deep, unnatural void where there should have been walls and an open door. The air inside the room thickened, pressing against my chest. Something shifted in the dark, unseen but undeniably there. I wasn't alone. The mirror flickered again. I forced myself to look. The reflection was wrong now. The room inside the mirror was not the room I was standing in. The walls were cracked, blackened with something that pulsed like decay. The air in the reflection seemed thicker, heavier, and Mia was still there. Her body was contorted, twisted unnaturally. Her head tilted at an impossible angle. Her dark, empty eyes locked onto mine. Couldn't breathe. The phone in my pocket buzzed violently, like it had been waiting for this moment. I pulled it out, my fingers shaking. The screen was glitching, lines of static racing up and down as the text appeared. "Turn around." I didn't want to, but I had to. Slowly, I turned my head back toward the hallway. The darkness had deepened, becoming something almost solid, stretching further than should have been possible. And then, something moved inside of it. Not fast, not sudden. A slow, dragging movement, the kind that made my skin crawl because it meant something was watching me. I staggered backward, pressing against the edge of the mirror. My breath came in sharp gasps, my mind racing for an escape. And then the whisper came, right against my ear, not from the phone, not from the mirror, from inside the room. "You left me." I bolted. I turned and ran, nearly colliding with the wall in my blind panic. The darkness seemed to shift and twist around me, the hallway stretching longer as I tried to find the door. My hands fumbled in the dark, searching for the knob. The whispers followed. They weren't in my head. They were real. "You promised. You were supposed to stay." I waited. My fingers finally found the handle. I twisted, pulled. Nothing. The door wouldn't open. A cold hand brushed the back of my neck. I screamed, throwing myself against the door with everything I had. It shuddered against my weight, but still didn't budge. My breath was coming in ragged gasps. Then the phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look. I knew whatever was on that screen wouldn't help me, but I had no choice. The message was different this time. There's another door. My chest tightened. My pulse roared in my ears. There was only one door in this house. I forced myself to turn my head, scanning the hallway. My flashlight flickered in my trembling grip, the beam barely cutting through the thick, suffocating dark. And then I saw it. A door that should not have been there. At the end of the hallway, just past where Mia's bedroom had been, a door now stood ajar, leading to somewhere else. Somewhere wrong. Couldn't breathe. My instincts screamed at me to stay away, to never open that door, to get out of this house before it was too late. But I was already trapped, and there was no other way out. Slowly, I moved toward it. Every step felt like I was moving through something thick, something unseen pressing against my skin like invisible hands trying to hold me back. The door was slightly open, just enough to see the darkness beyond it. I reached out, and before I could stop myself, I pushed it open. The darkness swallowed me whole. My ears rang with a sudden, piercing sound, like a scream that had been buried under layers of static. My vision blurred, the room around me twisting, shifting, melting into something else entirely. I wasn't in Mia's house anymore. I was somewhere else, somewhere she had been waiting. My phone flickered violently in my hand, the screen showing only one thing: a live video feed. It was showing me, standing in the darkness, and just behind me, Mia, not as I had known her, not as the woman I had once loved, but something else. Her body was wrong. Her limbs stretched unnaturally. Her mouth twisted in something between a smile and a snarl. Her hollow eyes locked onto mine through the screen. Then the video glitched. The last frame before it cut to black was her face, right against mine. And then I heard it, not from the phone, not from the room, right next to my ear. Now we're together again. The phone screen went black, and the door behind me slammed shut. The darkness around me was suffocating. It wasn't just the absence of light. It was something heavier, something alive, pressing against my skin like damp cloth wrapped too tightly around my face. My breath came in shallow gasps. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. Mia was here. Not the Mia I had known. Not the girl I had loved. The one whose touch had once been warm. This Mia was something else. Something wrong. The room around me was shifting. It wasn't Mia's house anymore. It was a space in between. The walls pulsed like a living thing, stretching and twisting as though they were made of something far less solid than wood. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, something like blood. I turned, my fingers shaking as I gripped my phone. The screen was black now. The last image of Mia's twisted reflection burned into my mind. Then the whisper came again. "You left me." The voice wasn't coming from behind me anymore. It was inside my head, crawling through my thoughts like something burrowing beneath my skull. I swallowed, my throat dry. "Mia, what do you want?" The silence stretched too long. Then laughter. Not human. Not right. It cracked through the thick air, high-pitched and hollow, like a sound forced through vocal cords that no longer belonged to a person. "You never asked me that before." I turned, trying to see her, trying to understand what I was facing. She was closer now, no longer just a figure in the dark. She was fully here. Her limbs moved wrong, too loose, too fluid, like she was held together by something unseen. Her eyes were empty, deep pits of black that reflected nothing. And yet, somehow I knew she could see me. She never blinked. "You were supposed to stay. You promised." I took a step back. "I never promised you that." My voice shook. "You can't keep me here, Mia. You're dead." Something flickered across her face. Something like sadness. Something like rage. The walls trembled, the air growing heavier, the shadows curling inward. She tilted her head. "Am I?" My grip on the phone tightened. She stepped closer. Her hand reached toward me. I felt it before she touched me. The cold sinking into my skin, into my bones. The room twisted around us, the walls stretching like something out of a nightmare. This place wasn't real. It was a construct, a cage. I had been pulled here, and I knew with horrifying certainty that if I didn't leave now, I never would. I took a step back, and my foot hit something solid. A door, the one I had come through, the one that had swallowed me whole. It was closed now, but the edges of it flickered like an old film reel barely holding on to reality. I lunged for it. Mia's voice rose, a scream of something ancient and desperate. "No!" Her hands wrapped around my arm, ice cold, burning through my skin. I fought. I had to. She wasn't Mia anymore. Maybe she never had been, not truly. I tore myself free, my skin feeling like it had been branded where she touched me. I slammed my fist against the door. It didn't open. She was behind me now, closer than before. The shadows curled around my ankles. My chest tightened. I wasn't strong enough. Then, the phone buzzed. I looked down. A message. "Break it." My mind reeled. Break what? Then I saw it. The mirror. It was still there, standing in the shifting dark, its edges warped and twisting. This wasn't just a door. It was the only way out. Mia knew it too. Her expression twisted, her mouth opening wider than a human mouth should. Her voice fractured into something inhuman. "Don't." I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the nearest object, a rusted, broken chair half buried in the shifting ground, and swung. The mirror shattered. The sound that followed wasn't glass breaking. It was a howl, a deep, resonant noise that ripped through the space like something ancient and furious had just been torn apart. Mia screamed. The world collapsed. Darkness folded inward. The walls caved in. The air rushed past me like a vacuum, pulling everything into oblivion. I fell, and then, silence. I gasped, my body jerking as if I had been yanked back into reality. I was lying on the floor of the old house. The normal one, the real one. The door behind me was gone. The mirror was gone. Mia was gone. I scrambled up, my chest heaving. The air was light again. The house was empty. My phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down. One final message. "Goodbye." I didn't hesitate. I ran. I left the house behind, the cold air of the Texas night biting against my skin as I gasped for breath. I didn't look back, and I never went back. Days passed, then weeks. I told no one what happened. Not Ben, not anyone. But sometimes at night I wake up to a sound, a buzz, a notification. I never check my phone right away. I leave it, sitting there on my bedside table, dreading what I already know is waiting. Because every now and then the messages come back, and they always say the same thing. "You can't forget me." The phone screen flickers once, then it goes dark. And somewhere, deep in the night, I swear I hear her laugh. The end.